from your old team that were involved in the hunt for him, and
Yep.
the stories they have about the stuff they came across. I don't even feel comfortable repeating. Like, it's so gross what this
Yep.
guy was doing. Um, on the CA, so you're a protective agent. I have a couple things because not some I'm overly familiar with, which is why I was really excited to have you. I know in your Sean Ryan interview, you talked about the Khost. Am I pronouncing that right? The Khost bombing,
Uh-huh.
and that's depicted in the movie Zero Dark 30, where they blow up they suicide bomb the car. I don't know if you've seen Zero Dark 30. It's a good film.
Yep.
Um, what went wrong to where a situation like that was able to happen, and then were there protocols that were changed to make sure it didn't ever happen again?
So yes, there were protocols that changed as a result of that. But what went wrong? So, in my opinion, it was a failure of leadership uh, at several levels. Um, uh, but I've seen it a lot, and I hate to say it, but so I get there in late '09 into Kabul, and I'm in charge of the protective operations group that's there. And I'm getting a picture. So I'm in Iraq the whole time until then. I get there in '09, and there's a lot of things that we're not doing the way, we're not doing things efficiently enough, and we can be more efficient in the way we're protecting these folks, and protocols that we have from a security protective standpoint that were being, I guess, mandated from outside of our group. So that was even on my list of things to do. Like, hey, we got to get this thing standardized. So my guys, all the guys that were out there doing the protection work, aren't having to do something different if they go from base to base. It's the same thing everywhere we go. So it was a little disjointed in that regard. But each individual base officer was chief was given latitude to do that, and which totally jacked up my guys, because you almost had to know a different language every time you go to another base. We're going to treat these people like this at this base and these people like this at another base. Um, but a lot of pressure, I think, was put on the chief out there that unfortunately forced her to make decisions that weren't necessarily the right way to do things. One of the things was not paying attention to my guys that were on the ground, on how to actually conduct the meeting, um, safety protocols and all that stuff. Um, Scott, that was out there as the team lead for the team that was protecting them. Yeah, I was on the phone with him a lot, and I just got there early December, and getting my feet on the ground, trying to figure out what's going on. And he at one point said, "Hey, there's been other guys too before him that were getting ready for him, because over the time he's canceling meetings and all that stuff, right? I'm just getting privy to all the things that were happening along the way." And Scott shows up, and he's trying to wrap his mind around, hey, this is not the way we do things, but we need to do it differently, and to make sure that everybody's safe. Well, those are kind of not adhered to. And I remember Scott calling me one time, and he said, "Well, they're not going to do it the way I want to do it, and you know, I can't be responsible for this because it's not going to come out good. If something bad happens, it's not going to look good on him, and he's not comfortable with it." And I was like, "Well, you can always just refuse, and not if it's that safe, then I don't know this dude either." It's like, but if they're saying that's that safe, then you don't have to be there at all. You can do something else. And he eventually does that. He says, "Well, if it's that safe, then I don't need to be here at all," because they wanted to do it things differently. And at one point, he just said, "Well, it's going to happen. He's coming," and he felt bad. He was going to feel bad if he wasn't there to do something. And yeah, unfortunately, uh, they work with what they get, and unfortunately, you know, gets him and two other the Juris dudes, and yeah, it doesn't work out well for us in the end.
So in the movie Zero Dark 30, what the public sees in Zero Dark 30 and then what actually happened, are those similar?
No. I
And
think they
can
got the point across, but yeah, it wasn't anything like that. One, you can't see that far. Like I think they had the chief in the movie looking through binos out at it across the desert or something like that, right? So it's not like that at all. You don't see anywhere past, I mean, maybe 50 feet from where they were standing. But I think they got a point across. That was fine. I was, made sense to me. It's like, okay, it gets the point across in the movie, and I guess they have to do it that way, but that's fine.
when you had heard, where were you when you had heard what had happened? And do you remember kind of what your immediate emotions were?
Oh yeah. Um, so I was in Kabul at our headquarters building there, and knew the guy that was working in what we call the office that was managing or overseeing or had pictures. We call it the and it was kind of the hub. It's like the communications hub. We had cameras and everything for every base that was happening out there. All the communication goes into this one place. And I was in my office down the hallway, and the guy that I had, another former unit guy, now working for the agency, comes down the hallway. And he's like, "Hey, Ninja, come over. Come here. Something just happened." He's grabbing everybody in this hallway. So all in that hallway is all the managers, all the senior leaders and managers of who's running operations in Kabul or in Afghanistan. And as we he get to his office, and he said, "I just got this is just in. I mean, so bear with the initial reporting, but there's been a bombing. It's happened at I can't remember where they said the exact spot. It's in Khost, um, and I wasn't familiar with that spot on the ground. And I thought it was downtown because he said this is what I got so far on KIA and Wounded and all this stuff. And some of the names on the list were some of my guys. And I thought this is happening downtown somewhere because that's what we do. We take people out in town to do meetings. And I wasn't privy to any of the planning for that thing. So that's where I thought it was. And my initial thoughts was, okay, there's only four guys on the ground. They just mentioned three names. So literally the whole team is gone, and I got to get some more guys on the ground. And um, real quickly in this little huddle, um, so little disjointed on what to do immediately. Little hesitation on stuff, and I said, "Well, I'm going to go get some guys, get them ready to fly to Khost, and I'll be right back." And told our contractor team leader to get a bunch of guys, get four guys ready to fly with me to Khost. Something's happened there. I don't have any details, but we got to get there like right now. Go pack some bags. And as he's assembling guys, I go back upstairs and so we have the guy who's running the air operations, who has control of all the airplanes and helicopters in Afghanistan. He's making his phone calls and radio calls and alerting people. Everybody's starting to jump through hoops to get out there. A ground team is actually ready to roll, which is takes that's going to be a bit if we have to do that. And at the same time, we have some aircraft that are down for maintenance, and they're waiting for parts. So they're the weather conditions weren't allowing things either, visibility and all that stuff. We're hindering some things. But we finally get on the ground, get in a plane. That plane gets a flat tire on the tarmac. That was a mess. But we finally get on the ground, and by the time we get there, so we're talking explosion plus 4 hours or so. They're already the last person is lifting off when we arrive and going to the nearby army base or military base and to the hospital. Um, so yeah, it was and I think if I'm correct, the actual reporting said, lack of leadership or a failure of leadership at several levels. And Leon Panetta at the time, the director, he was a good he was the first one to say, it starts with me. But to be honest with you, I think could have been handled differently, should have been handled differently, obviously. But I think that on the operations side, just the chief that was out there just there's too much pressure on that person to make something happen sooner, pressure into making some mistakes or making some decisions that otherwise probably wouldn't have been made. And so that's when I say failure of leadership. The pressure that was put on the chief at the time um, probably shouldn't have gone down that way. So first time in the field, working with all these other folks like my guys, and how the dynamics of that's supposed to work or usually works. Um, that was just I think there was just too much pressure for the chief at the time. Um, and then our guys did exactly what they were supposed to do given what the situation they were in. Um, So who knows? I mean, the only thing that they would have did differently is they wanted to do everything. We do everything outside the base, right? So everybody's safe. By the time they get to the base, then we know we're turning over somebody who's perfectly clean, no weapons, no bombs, no nothing. That's just not the way it happened. But yeah, bad things happen. Decisions are made. I mean, in combat and war and those kind of situations, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, right? And I wish it would have been, and me and a lot of folks wish it would have went differently, but it wasn't. It's not that. Uh, it's not a place to say, I told you this was going to happen. I told you so kind of thing. But it's happened in places before, but we did change a lot of protocols, uh, so it wouldn't happen again. Put some fail safes in there at different levels. Um, yeah, and so far so good. I think things happen though. I mean, yeah. So for us, we're the people who are putting ourselves. So that's our job, right? Putting ourselves in harm's way uh, early on and far enough away so everybody else is safe. If that's the case, that's what we're dealing with, right? But we weren't. Our guys weren't allowed to do that. So and unfortunately, the little more people were injured just because they wanted it a little bit more. I don't know, like almost like a meeting greet kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
a more welcoming environment was kind of the thing. I want a more welcoming environment. And in our mind, and the guys that were out there, it's like, okay, well, we don't know this dude, and so we're going to treat him like a bad guy, just like that, just from the start, um, and let him prove to us that he's not before we hand him over to all of our officers. That's not the way it went down, but yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that and shining a light and reflecting on that, because I think it's a story that is not just important, but a lot of people, maybe not as many people, should know. But that does kind of lead into a segue of something that I think is very famous, and that is the attack on Benghazi in 2012. I